Fizz, who's calling in from California. Fizz, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
What's going on? How's it going, guys? Pleasure to be on the call. That last one was pretty fun, huh?
That was something. I will tell you that.
Long time. Come again?
I was saying, yeah, that was definitely something. But go ahead, Fizz.
I've been thinking a lot about what it means to live a good, happy life, and part of that discovery involves like free will, and if I actually have that, and I just wanted to like get your guys' take on like what evidence there is in support of or against free will, and like if I think Blitz, I've been following you for a long time. I think you lead in deterministic, if I'm not mistaken. But like, how do you live a happy life? And enjoy. How do you live a happy life in general? If one doesn't have if their decisions aren't actually their decisions.
Interesting. Why don't you start with this, Dr. Blitz? Because I would like to hear your take as well.
I mean, practically speaking, if determinism is true, then all that says is that you don't choose your will, that your will, the things that you desire, the things, your goals, etc., that these things are in some sense determined by, your environment or your brain or whatever it might be. And then you act upon your will because that's what agents do. Agents act upon their will. But if being happy is just achieving your goals, fulfilling your will, then there's no issue with potentially being a happy person, even in a deterministic universe, because you will still act upon your will. You just don't choose it, which is, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind as you, actually. I definitely am a hard determinist at this point in my life. But I haven't found that incompatible with the idea of being happy, right? Because even though I don't get to choose my will, as you said, I can still fulfill it, right? I'm still part of a bigger system that interacts with other people, and like my motivations can change and other things about me can change. And while parts of that may be outside of my control, that doesn't mean that there isn't a self that enjoys that. Now, whether or not there even is like a self to begin with, and what that means is a whole other conversation. But in terms of being happy, I can still find comfort and still find happiness in that. That's definitely not the stumbling block, I think. But I don't know. I just leave it at that.
What is the stumbling block for you? If I may ask,
question. It's just kind of weird just waking up every day and living in the world that we live in, right? Like looking back and seeing the human history and like where we've gotten to and where we're going, and knowing that I'm just a very, very, very tiny part of that. That's what's kind of weird to me, I guess. And knowing like what's my role in all that. I'm freaking lucky. I get to do some podcasting stuff here and there, and that's kind of cool. But other than that, I live a normal life with a normal wife and have a normal job and do everything else like most of society does. So there is sort of an existential sort of draw for me there that does give me pause, and I wonder how to reconcile myself with that. I like Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and I take his approach to it, which is just kind of like, I don't know, find the humor in it all, find something that you can grasp onto, and just like enjoy the connections that you have with other people, because that's all that we get. And so I can be happy that I have that, at least. But like whether or not I have a will or not, like I'm still going to have the sort of issue, right, of like what we're doing here. And how I manage that. But anyway, that's sort of the thing that keeps me up at night, I guess. What about you, Dr. Blitz?
What keeps me up at night? Usually it's my cat.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, just like, free will's the stuff that doesn't seem to be a problem for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, and for what it's worth, and I'm no philosopher, but for what it's worth, the notion of free will is like there's like the notion of libertarian free will, which is spoken about by philosophers, and it's kind of like put bluntly, it's something like the ability to have done otherwise. But like everybody knows that that's not a real thing, at least anybody who thinks about this seriously. And I should say, not really anybody, but most people. But there's other notions of free will, like, is there in some sense that you can like act upon your own internal desires, external from, or avoiding external influences. And in that sense, yeah, we do have free will. Like, this is just kind of redefining the term in a sense that we can usefully use. And so, like, it just depends on how you define the terms. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the actions that we take, the desires that we have, are governed by both external and internal phenomena. Now, as to whether or not the self exists, I don't know, Dan. That's on you.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but that's
I don't want to go there too much, Dan. Me neither. I didn't want to go too much into depth about that, but had a follow-up question for you guys on the subject of free will. So, like, if nobody's if the way society is structured, right, we still hold people accountable. For example, Jeffrey Dahmer does obscene things. He has to go to jail. He has to be held accountable for that. But like, how do we rationalize this if nobody's if nobody's really choosing, right? And they kind of had to do what they had to do, if you will. So how do we kind of how do we ration that? How do we, think about forgiveness, about blame, or even self-improvement in a world where people are not really acting with if they had to do it,
Well, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, in that I'm a person that exists within a larger system, right? And so that system is still going to influence me in my motivations, in my desires, and my actions, right? So living in a society that has laws and has the fulfillment of those laws and these ideas of justice, whether or not they're like objectively real or not, they still do affect people and the lives that they live, right? So like, I am not affected, as far as I know, by like lead poisoning or whatever, right? But like, we still take lead paint out of communities that have it because we know about the negative consequences of that, and we want people to have like, better lives and stuff. That doesn't mean that somebody whose actions are, what we would consider to be bad and maybe should be prosecuted for, even if they were affected by, lead poisoning or whatever, doesn't mean that they can't be held accountable for that, right? Like, I think still having that system of accountability still makes sense, even in a system that, might be largely happening around us rather than what's happening internally, because it's that system that helps keep us getting better and better, right? So in other words, we kind of have to have that system in order to live better lives, even if it means holding people accountable for stuff that they're going to have, maybe not as much control as we think. Hopefully that makes sense. I have a hard time explaining that concept, but I don't know. What do you think, Dr. Blitz?
So, I mean, there's certainly a practical aspect to it. That, in some sense, you would expect even like a system of robots, right? Like, just robots. You would expect them, if you tell them that their goal is to develop a society that does XYZ, you would expect them to develop a set of rules to reinforce their society, right? Whether they have free will or not, just because rules help for uniformity and, to achieve whatever ends. There's also a notion in which you can just like redefine what it means for someone to be responsible, right?
Yeah.
When we say responsible, like whether or not you believe in free will, typically that's understood to be is some sense of like the cause was inside of them rather than external. Like, you wouldn't say that if somebody told you, hey, if you don't rob this convenience store, I'm going to blow your head off, and then the person robs the convenience store, they probably wouldn't be held liable for robbing the convenience store, right? Because the cause of them doing that, the direct cause of them doing that, was some external force. And so if you just define responsibility to be something like, you're responsible for your action if your action is directly caused by something internal to you, well, then now you have a good explanation of what responsibility is, and you can have a useful justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I see. No, I mean, I think you guys are like rationalizing this pretty well. I think it's just such a challenging topic to grapple with, and I think if you define free will as like, as something that you have that was externally like forced upon you to act upon a certain way, that's one thing. But it sounds like free will is kind of like something that's internally determined, but therefore you still have responsibility for it. I don't know if I summarized that accurately, but
yeah, I mean, look, the idea is that a lot of human actions, I mean, like, if free will doesn't exist, then surely at least a lot of our human behavior is based off of memories that we have that influence the way that we developed. It's based off of genetics that influenced perhaps our like brain structure and hence our temperament. It's based off of certain chemicals that we may have been exposed to at certain times, like various hormones and things like this. And then it'll also be based partially on external factors, like, are you not making a lot of money right now? And so that might drive you to be more risk taking, because you're desperate for whatever. So yeah, there are going to be a lot of influences on your actions that are both external. But I mean, you could probably argue that in most cases, the causes for your actions are almost entirely internal. And so if that's a good enough definition of free will, that, whatever caused your action was internal to you, then you can use that as a definition and just say we have free will. It's just not what people mean when they're talking about like this ability to have chosen otherwise, right?
Right. We can't confuse the map for the territory. When I used to work in education, one of the most prescient things that I learned was that a child's zip code is going to be their greatest determinant of success in the school system. And that held true in my experience. And it's a sad thing to realize that your circumstances of birth are going to be what largely determine your success there. But it held to be true. Besides that, though, that doesn't mean that I treat the kids from one zip code differently than I treat the kids from another zip code. Right? Because every kid still deserves a chance at success in school. And that's what I tried to help them with and help them with other things in life too when it was relevant. So like, just because we have some predetermined ideas about what could make someone's personality or behaviors, be it their genetic makeup, environment, whatever, doesn't mean that we still have to go with this idea of, oh, well, it's hopeless or it's pointless because it doesn't matter. I think human beings have proven themselves to be more than exceptional sometimes when it comes to these things. And if we just give up now, we fail to see the potential that people can bring to the table in a way. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts.
Question for you guys. It's kind of a two-pronged question there. Number one, what does the scientific evidence say about free will? Like, is there an overwhelming amount of evidence saying that free will doesn't exist? And then secondly, would you guys say that if we lived in a world where free will did exist and we could confirm that we had free will, would that be an objectively better world or no?
Okay. I don't know if science says free will exists or not. I think a lot of people have opinions on it. I know they've done surveys of philosophers and what they think of this. And the last time they did like a Phil paper survey on this, most philosophers are in the compatibilist camp, actually, believe it or not. Only a minority of them are in it was something like 11% or something were in the hard determinist, I think, last time I saw, but I don't know if this was Phil papers or somewhere else. And then like, of course, the libertarian idea of free will was the smallest minority. Most folks were in, I think I might be, I'm going off memory here. I might not be correct, but compatibilism, I know for sure was the most popular idea. Right. So this idea that, yeah, there's some stuff that we can't control, but maybe there's an idea of free will that can kind of work. Right. The second part to your question, I'm trying to remember now what you were asking. But that's what I know about the first part. Would it make
the world a better place if there was free will?
Right. Okay. Making the world a better place. So does it make the world a better place? I mean, I guess if people's self-esteem relies on the fact that, they have free will or not, maybe. Right. That might affect somebody's like personal outlook, but I don't accept the fact that I have free will and I'm doing okay. I don't know if that would actually change me in any way. I think that's kind of a personal question of whether that does anything for anybody. I don't think it should change you. I think you're going to do what you're going to do anyway. Right. But I don't know. That's my take. What do you think, Dr. Blitz?
So to be I don't know why I can't talk. So if we're defining free will as libertarian free will, meaning that there is some immutable aspect of the human mental experience that is allowed to just make decisions in an uncaused way, if we're talking about libertarian free will in that sense, there's not really any room for it when you're thinking about things scientifically. Essentially, what that would require is that there's stuff in the brain that violates the laws of physics, basically. Yeah. And, we have basically the entirety of the physics of the brain is fully understood. There's nothing really happening that's smaller scale that we don't have access to. Like, you don't need string theory to understand the brain. Quantum mechanics, atomic physics, molecular physics is enough. And we understand those things very well. So yeah, I mean, at least as far as like the physics of the brain is concerned, yeah, there's not really room for free will in a libertarian sense.
There you go.
But if by free will you just mean the ability to act upon your will in a way that is unrestricted, absolutely that exists. I mean, so long as you're not like tied up in a basement somewhere, then yeah, you have the ability to act upon your will in an unrestricted way. And so, I mean, as far as I'm aware, like that's what compatibilists typically mean when they talk about, oh yeah, there's a sense of free will that's compatible with determinism, namely the ability to act upon your will unrestricted. Now, I don't think that whether libertarian free will existed or not, I don't think that would affect the world at all, because people already act as if they have free will. So I don't think anything would change.
Yeah, maybe the legal system would change a bit differently. Maybe some people would be harsher in punishment. I don't know. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But
Yeah.
I don't think it can ever be verified that free will is an objective fact either. So
unless we find the free will particle,
Makes
the
sense.
free will on, if you will.
It's the next to the Higgs boson, I think.
Don't you mean the God particle?
Right. It's like its second cousin, I think. They couldn't find it because God has to leave us alone in order to have free will. So the God particle has to stay separate from the free will particle in order for the free will particle to have free will, I think.
Yeah. And the God particle being omnipresent means that you can never find the free will particle.
That's right.
So
yeah, see, theology can inform your understanding of physics, I think.
Poorly, but it can.
Yeah, really great stuff. All right, Fizz, I think that's all the time that we have for your questions. But thanks so much for calling in. Great questions. I love it. I hope to hear from you again with some more great thinkers. But for now, I will let you go, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.